I got to go to CEDIA 2025. This was such a cool experience. I was not planning on going. It was kind of a last minute thing, and I was able to make it happen. And boy, am I glad I did. CEDIA is an incredible experience. If you haven't been, I can't recommend it enough. It is, it's like Disneyland for adults. It is so much fun. Now, what exactly is it? Well, it's basically everything audio, video, technology related. Like if you're into home theater, if you're into audio, this is the place for you. Now, there are a few things that I saw that I want to highlight. And the first one, because you saw it in the thumbnail, is this 60-inch subwoofer from Deus Audio Machines. This thing, I mean, it's just bonkers. It's absolutely nuts. I stood next to it. I'm like, this thing is almost as tall as I am, or taller. It is so big. And I talked to Devin at Deus Audio Machines, and he told me all about it. They make it right there in their factory, which, by the way, is kind of local to me. And so I'm hoping that I'll be able to set up some sort of tour, maybe make a video about how they make these things. But anyways, yeah, that subwoofer, absolutely nuts. If you have the means to put that in your house, I want to come see your theater because it is crazy. So I started off the CEDIA experience. First of all, it spanned 3, almost 4 days. And the first day I got there kind of in the afternoon, and I went straight to the Trinov press event where they gave us more details about the all new Altitude CI processor. This thing is really cool, guys. This is kind of an amazing processor. If you don't know, I've made a whole video about it when they made their big announcement on the press release. But in this press event that I went to at CEDIA, I got even further details. A lot of you guys were asking in the comments about pricing. And at the point that I made the video, we didn't have that, but now we do have the pricing. So if you don't know, real quick, the Altitude CI processor, it starts base level with 8 channels. So this is a pay as you go, pay only for what you need kind of model. So it starts at $11,000, and that comes with 8 channels. And then you can add in 2-channel increments all the way up to 32 channels. And each additional 2 channels costs $1,250, $1,250. If you wanted to get it with 10 channels, that would be $12,250, and then add $1,250 for each additional 2 channels. And the way it works is you buy it, and then say, you only need 10 channels, and then a year down the road, you're like, I want to add 2 more channels. You just call them up, they unlock the other 2 channels, and away you go. And you can just do that indefinitely, all the way up to 32. Though actually they have in the works plans to make it capable up to 64 channels, which is, I mean, that's just insane, right? Like, who needs that? But do we really need any of this? Like, no, we want this stuff, right? So yeah, I want 64 channels, right? So anyways, the Altitude CI, super cool machine. They did mention in this event, there were some questions regarding the delay. Now, here's what happens with Trinov. And I actually saw it with some other manufacturers that'll go unnamed. But when you're listening to something in stereo, and then you switch over to something that's in Atmos, it takes a few seconds for it to do all the handshakes and get the Trinov set up to then produce sound in Atmos. When it changes formats, there's a few seconds delay. And there's also some kind of snapping in the speakers. It's kind of like a click, 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 and then it switches over. They said that this is not hardware related, that it's in the software. And so they are working on coming up with a fix for this. So that's kind of cool. It's not a huge deal because, it's not a big deal. But if they can fix it, that'd be great. Now, the next day is when the exhibitor showroom opened up. So one of the first things I saw was I went to the Yamaha demonstration, and they had a little sound demo room, and it was a little bit different because this was just a sound bar. And so you'd sit there and, you had the screen, and it was kind of only room for a couple people. And so you would watch the demo scene. I think it was from Superman. And it was really cool. Like, it was surprising how good that soundbar sounded. Now, it was a soundbar and a subwoofer, and then it did have a couple surround speakers, but it sounded really good. That was a lot of fun. I also got to see the Seymour Screen exhibit. This was pretty cool because I've never seen a demo of Seymour Screens up to this point. A lot of the demo rooms were using Seymour Screens, but I was able to see all the different frames that they can do and their masking, their auto masking system. That is really cool, guys. I'm thinking I need a masking system here in my theater. After seeing his demo, I'm like, dang, I need some masking. And then I went and I saw the JBL demo booth area, and they had a couple things set up. One was they had their MA. It's JBL MA. It's kind of like a basic receiver. It's a budget receiver, but it's not so much budget performance wise. It's more budget in that it's user friendly, and it's meant to kind of appeal to the masses, where you can get a Dolby Atmos enabled receiver, and then they have built their whole ecosystem where they had their demo room set up where it was all matching speakers all the way around. All their mains and their sides and their surrounds were all the same model. The center obviously was a different model, but I think it was the same speakers. It was just in a different cabinet. And then they had a couple subwoofers and a couple in-ceiling height speakers. And the whole thing, he told me, he says retail, it sells for $7,000. And I was really surprised. I'm like, wow, that's a really good deal because of how good it sounds. It was quite impressive. So I saw a demo, or I listened to a demo from Origin Acoustics, and they had some on-wall speakers and on-wall subwoofers set up on a display, and the dude was jamming out. He was just streaming it from like an iPod Shuffle or something. It was kind of funny, but dang, it was rocking. And I heard it, I'm like, whoa, that sounds awesome. And so I went over, and it was just a couple 10-inch on-wall subs, and it was thumping, and it was very, very impressive. I actually want to learn more about this company and their speakers. I think he said they're based out of like Las Vegas, Nevada, somewhere around there, I want to say. But anyways, that one was really cool to see. There was, of course, a demo of theater chairs. Fortress Seating had a whole area set up where you could sit in the seats, which was really nice because this place was huge. And so I did a lot of walking. So it was really nice to be able to just walk by and just plop myself down in one of their demo chairs and just kind of relax for a few minutes. And those are really, really nice seats. And then we got to some of the theater demo rooms. These are just dedicated rooms. They're built structures. They're totally closed off. They're all blacked out. And I started with Crix, which is an Australian speaker company. And I went in and I did their demo, listened to it. And one of the clips they played was No Time to Die. And it was awesome. I mean, if you haven't seen that movie, it is seriously from beginning to end, it is just stacked with incredible audio demo material. And they played the best of the best from it when he's being chased in his Aston Martin, and then the machine guns come out and he starts doing the burnout. It was awesome. It was so cool. That theater sounded amazing. The other theater room that I made a special point to go into, they called it the $1 Million Theater, because apparently it has $1 million worth of equipment in it, and it was stunning. First of all, you walk in the room and there are two very large subwoofers literally at the back of the back row. So if you're sitting on the back row, you're about 6 inches away from subs that are massive. Now, these particular subs, they're not as large as that 60-inch from Deus Audio Machines, but they are very large, especially from that distance. I fortunately wasn't sitting in the very back row. I think I was sitting in the middle row, so I at least had a few feet of separation. That theater was amazing. And like I say, they had all Ascendo speakers, and at the end of the demo, they had a retractable screen. The screen rose up, and then we got to see what they were running for their LCRs. Those are the funkiest looking speakers I've ever seen. Leave it to Ascendo to come up with such a design. You know, they've got those massive horn speakers that I've seen before. Well, these speakers, it's like a dome with a bunch of speakers inside of the dome, and they sounded incredible. They really were. They're on-wall speakers, and it was just crazy. Honestly, I'm sitting there in this demo room, in this $1 million theater. And I was thinking to myself, I'm like, this is almost a religious experience. Like this, it is so overpowering, so overwhelming. It just really is impossible to describe what these demo rooms looked and sounded like. It's just, I can't do it service. Like obviously just me talking and showing you short clips of it, it's not even in the same universe of what it's like to actually be in the rooms. Now, I will say, I'll give you a tip here. If you go to CEDIA, so CEDIA was the main exhibitor floor was open on Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. And I did all my demo room demos on Thursday and Friday, which quite a few of them I had to stand in line for. Well, on Saturday, the crowds really thin out. Like I could have just walked in all of the demo rooms on Saturday. So the tip is do all the floor stuff on Thursday, Friday, and then on the last day, go and do the demo rooms because you'll just be able to walk right in and you won't have to wait. So that's a tip that I wish I had known before I got there, but here we are. Now there's one that was just I made the poor presenter repeat himself. I was like, whoa, hold on, I need to clarify here. So I go into the K-Array demo room and we go in and on the wall, there are some speakers, but they don't look like regular speakers. And I don't know. I just wasn't really paying attention. I wasn't like super dialed into what the presenter was saying. And then he's like, okay, and now we're going to start the demo. And so then he hit play and the sound started playing and it was big and it was loud and it was very impressive. And then the demo clip ended and he's like, and all of that sound was coming out of these two tiny speakers up here and this little subwoofer. Now, when I say tiny speakers, I literally mean like the end of my thumb. Like that's how big the speakers are. The entire speaker case, like the cabinet of the speaker, everything is about the size of the end of my thumb. And there were just two of them. And then a little 4-inch subwoofer down at the bottom. And so when he's like, and that's what, that the sound was coming out, I was like, whoa, hold on. I'm sorry. I'm going to have to clarify here. Are you saying that what we just listened to was coming from those two little thumb-sized speakers and the little 4-inch sub? He's like, yeah, that's right. You got to be kidding me. Oh my gosh. That was crazy. Now, I will say, the high end, obviously, very good. The low end, surprisingly good, coming from a 4-inch sub. I felt like the mid-range was a little, it could have been fuller, but honestly, guys, here's the point. For what you have there, the sound was kind of mind-blowing. I was like, I cannot believe I'm hearing what I'm hearing, and it's coming from those tiny little speakers. It was nuts. And then he proceeded to then go on and demo their larger speakers. They had an array where it was like 4 of those tiny little speakers, packaged together in one speaker, and then they got larger from there. But that one was very surprising, very, very shocking. I'd never seen or heard anything like that before. That was nuts. And then I got to the Denon Marantz event. This was at the end of the second day, and this was awesome. This was absolutely awesome. So Phil Jones, you've probably seen him. He's on like Audioholics a lot. He's on. I've seen him on a lot of YouTube videos. He's the Marantz guy, right? And so he was there presenting, and he was presenting a demo theater that they had set up, and then there was also another demo room with a couple of the Bowers and Wilkins Nautilus speakers. If you're not familiar with those, they're about $100,000 for a pair. And I've never seen those in person before. I've seen a lot of pictures of them over the years, but I've never seen one in person. I finally got to see them and hear them. I'll get to that in a moment. So Phil, he gave us a demo, and there were some guys there from Dirac Live. And Dirac Live, they are developing ART, active room treatment. This is an enhanced version of Dirac Live. So there's Dirac Live, and then there's bass control. Well, ART, active room treatment, is kind of taking all of that and packaging it together to create a room treatment, calibration, audio equalization program, algorithm, whatever you want to call it. And we did some A/B testing. So Phil would play some music. He played, I think it was Layla from Eric Clapton, and we listened to it for 4 or 5 seconds with art turned on, and then he would turn it off, and then 4 or 5 seconds, and we'd switch back with it on and go back and forth, back and forth. There was a distinct difference, an absolute distinct difference, and the best way to describe it is when art was turned off, the sound, imagine that like this, there's like a circle and you want the sound to be contained in the circle because that's where it's controlled, that's where it's tight, that's where everything is dialed in. But if the sound gets outside of the circle, then there's maybe like a hint of harshness, or it's a little bright, or some sibilance, something like that. Like there's just artifacts, right? When it gets outside the line. With art turned off, it sounded really, really good because this theater was awesome. It sounded amazing. But with art turned off, the sound would sometimes get just outside the lines of that circle. And especially when it came to Eric Clapton's voice and the bass guitar. And it would you just hear little hints of it. But once he turned art on, it just, and everything just became very controlled, very tight, very warm, very full, just very controlled. That's the best word I can use to describe it. You're just sitting there where the music was just washing over you, and it was beautiful, absolutely beautiful. And then later in the demo, after the official demo ended, then Techno Dad, he was there along with Joe and Tell, and he was like, "Hey, let's play some of my demo clips, or some of his music, that he's mixed in Atmos." So Phil cranked those up, and Chana D, he was getting pretty rowdy. He's up in the front row. He's like, turn it up. He's like, he's rocking out. It was awesome. It was so cool. And then they played one of his songs. I can't remember which one it was. It might have been On My Knees. And then Phil did the A-B switch, art on, art off, art on. And everybody was like, oh my gosh, this is your demo clip. Because the difference was so striking, so obvious. It was just night and day, crystal clear how much better it was with art enabled. So that's something to look forward to. They said that art from Direct Live is going to be available on all Marantz machines. It's going to be compatible with any Marantz machine that has 4 independent sub outs. So any model that has that, it will be able to have art enabled on it. So that was very cool. Now we get to the Bowers and Wilkins Nautilus speaker demo. I go in, and the first thought I had, honestly, the very first thought I had looking around the room was, my gosh, could they have found a worse room for this demo? I'm not joking. It was horrendous. One entire wall, like it was a rectangle, and one of the long walls, it was just solid glass. Literally, it was just solid windows, 12 feet high. I mean, I'm like, okay, that right there, terrible. And then the ceiling was about 12 feet high for one half of it, but then the other half of it went up another 10 feet. So you had this big, massive like alcove in the ceiling, and it was just horrendous. And I was like, dang, I get to hear these legendary speakers, and the room sucks. The room is terrible. And so that's totally going to ruin this experience. I could not have been more wrong. Now, obviously, hearing those speakers in a perfectly treated room where the room is just absolutely perfect, that would be an absolutely sublime experience, no doubt. However, despite the horrendous conditions, the horrendous design of the room, despite all that, those speakers sounded unreal. He played the entire song, and it's a song from Freya Writings. I had never heard of her, and I had never heard of this song. And it's the song Lost Without You. And it's the song, he gave us the background. He said, this is a song where she was dating this guy, and he had been away, and then he was coming home, and she went to surprise him at the train station when he came home. And she got there, and he got off the train, and she was so excited to see him. And he's like, I want to break up with you. I want to go off and see the world. And she was just devastated. And so she went home and she wrote this song. And so he told us that. He gave us the backstory, and then he played the song. And, I mentioned earlier how those theater demo rooms were bordering on almost being a religious experience. Well, this was without a doubt a religious, spiritual experience. This was unreal. I'm sitting there in the room. I was actually sitting on the floor. There were like 4 chairs, 2 rows of 4 chairs, and there were like 10 of us. So I was like, I guess I'll sit on the floor. I sat on the floor and I listened to this song, and unreal. I don't have words to describe what this experience was like. It was absolutely incredible. And I am so grateful that I got to experience that. And if you ever have a chance to hear those speakers, do it. Do it. It is absolutely worth it. So I saw something that was kind of funky. It was pretty weird. They were like these white movie pods, and they're chairs, and they had a single so you could sit by yourself, or a double where you could sit with 2 people and kind of crowd into this movie pod. I don't have a better word for it. And inside the pod there's a bunch of speakers. So I guess the idea is to have your own personal surround sound experience. I don't know. I wasn't there when they were actually up and running and able to demo them, so I didn't actually get to experience it firsthand. But just seeing it, I was like, wow, that's an idea. That's something. So that was kind of interesting. So I don't know. Tell me what you think of those. What you think that might sound like. I have no idea, but definitely an interesting concept. There were a lot of screens at this event. A lot of massive LED walls. I mean, wall screens that just would absolutely dwarf your room. I mean, they literally are modules. So they're literally able to basically build them to almost any size that you can imagine. And one of the challenges that I noticed when I looked at these large screens, I'm like, how in the world are you going to fit that in your house? Well, they actually come in small pieces and you assemble them on the wall. And honestly, you get more than a couple feet back and you can't see the seams. In fact, the only way to see the seam is if they're not playing anything on the screen. If they're playing any content at all, you can get right up next to them and then you still can't see the seam. It's quite amazing. Now they are pretty expensive, but honestly, like when you compare them to a high-end projector screen, like it's not out of the realm of possibilities. I mean, like I saw this one that was roughly about the same size as my screen that I have here in my theater here. And the guy told me this was from AWOL. I think that's how you pronounce it. It's either a wall or AWOL screens. He told me that it would be $42,000 for that screen, which, I mean, if you're spending $100,000 on a pair of speakers, what's another 40 for the screen, right? But those were really cool. I was very intrigued by these video walls and the potential for those, and they're pretty cool. Now the big drawback on those, and I've said this before, but the big drawback on those video walls is that you can't put the speakers behind the screens. That's still one of those limitations that a projector and a projector screen will just always have that advantage over these video walls unless they can make acoustically transparent LED video screens. If they can do that, at that point, then it really just comes down to like price, and then they may have projectors beat. But anyways, it was super cool to see all the screens. Samsung had a couple screens there with their anti-glare coating. It's not so much a coating; it's like a screen that goes over the screen that doesn't allow reflected light to bounce back off of it. And those were really cool. I mean, the coloring on those was just so vivid and vibrant, and no reflections. We were in an expo room with tons of lights around and there was no reflection. It was amazing. It was super, super cool. Now I have to talk about a demo room that really just kind of blew me away. And this was from Theory Speakers, Theory. And honestly, this was one of, if not the best presentation I saw from the entire show. We went in, we sat down, and the guy, I think he may be the owner of the company. I don't know. He definitely sounded like he was high up, if not the owner, the president. And he was giving the presentation, and he started out, and he initially played just 2 in-ceiling speakers that were mounted in the wall, either side of the screen, and they were just 2 6-inch round speakers. And he's like, now you're probably wondering, why would I show you a demo of these two 6-inch speakers with no subwoofer. He's like, well, you're about to hear. And then he hit play, and I sat back in my seat. I could not believe that I was hearing that sound from just two 6-inch speakers, no subwoofer. It was amazing. And then it just got even more mind-blowing from there. He went to a different set of speakers, and then he added in a sub, and then he played what he had set up for the height speakers, and then surround speakers, and then at the end he put it all together for one big demo clip. And honestly, that presentation was second to none. It was so well done. I can't really explain why it was so impactful and why it was so effective, other than to say it was just, it was like, here's what we have, and now we're going to play it for you, and the product speaks for itself. Like, we don't really have to explain much else other than to just let you hear it. And it was just, it was crazy good. It was so good. I actually almost considered going back the next day to experience it again, but unfortunately I had to get on the road to get home. But all in all, this was an awesome trip. It was so much fun. The problem is it was 3 days long, and honestly, 3 days, like, I would have needed 10 days to really fully experience everything that there was to experience at this show. It really was so much there. So I feel like I barely even scratched the surface. It was just so much fun, and I am definitely going to make it to the next one next year. I hope, fingers crossed, I can make it to the next one next year. So thanks for watching.